I'm Chelsea, 62, sitting in my garden, watching the sunrise paint the roses in hues of pink and gold. I'm brought back to a pivotal time in my life. 6 months ago, I received a call that changed everything. It was from Dr. Elizabeth Reed at St. Mary's Hospital. She informed me that David, my stepson, was in the hospital after a car accident and he was asking for me. Despite the way his family had treated me, I felt that old maternal concern. I quickly changed into something more appropriate, a simple green dress that my late husband, Robert, always adored, and rushed to the hospital. David was in a private room, his right leg in a cast and his arm in a sling. When he saw me, he was relieved. "You came," he said softly. I assured him I would because he was hurt. The nurse mentioned they couldn't reach his wife, Lily. I wasn't shocked. In the months since they'd been forced out of my house, I'd heard through the town grapevine that their marriage had fallen apart. Apparently, the realization that their financial security was built on false assumptions had put a huge strain on their relationship. David then started to open up. He told me how he'd known it was wrong when Lily threw me out of my own house the night Robert died. He was so angry and disappointed about the will that he let Lily convince him I was the problem. But he also remembered how I'd been more of a mother to him than his biological mother ever was. He'd been living with the guilt for 6 months, and he needed me to know that he saw what he'd thrown away, not the money or the inheritance, but the unconditional love I'd given him. His words made me reflect on that fateful night. Robert had passed away after a long, fought battle with cancer. At his funeral, everything was as he would have wanted it. I sat in the front pew, wearing the purple dress he always said brought out my eyes. Everyone whispered about what a devoted wife I'd been, but little did they know. Robert had 3 children from his first marriage, David, the youngest, and 2 others, Mark and Susan. Lily, David's wife, had always been cold towards me. She saw me as a gold digger, marrying Robert for his money, even though she had no idea about my real financial situation. After the funeral, the reception was held at what everyone assumed was our house. Family members I barely knew were rummaging through photo albums, and distant cousins were sizing up the furniture. Lily was especially calculating. She watched me with a cold look in her eyes all day. Around 8:30, when the last guest left, I was in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. I heard her heavy footsteps stop at the kitchen threshold. She announced that it was over and told me to cut the act. She said they needed to talk about practical matters, the house, Robert's assets, and the family business. She and David, along with Mark and Susan, thought it was best for me to find my own place. I was stunned. This was my home for 13 years. But she was relentless, saying I was 62, Robert had taken care of me, and now I needed to downsize. She dismissed me as someone who'd never worked and had just been there. I was heartbroken, but instead of fighting, I simply said okay. I packed 2 suitcases that night and left for the Pinewood Inn. I checked in under my maiden name, Chelsea Thompson, and paid cash for a week. The next day, I called my long-time attorney, Henry Miller. He'd been Robert's attorney for 20 years, but also mine for the past 12. He knew about my real financial situation, which Robert's family was completely unaware of. I'd inherited a fortune from my first husband, who passed away when I was 36. I'd used that money to invest in properties and businesses over the years. Henry assured me that everything was legally mine and he could restructure my assets within 2 weeks. I decided to let Robert's family get comfortable in my house, thinking they were about to inherit a fortune. Over the next few days, Lily kept sending me urgent messages, asking me to come back and explain some discrepancies in the paperwork. I ignored them all. I spent my mornings in the hotel's business center, making calls to my property managers and investment advisors. They had no idea that I owned 3 luxury apartment complexes in Miami and a renovated office building in downtown Chicago, worth over $30 million. On Friday, Henry called to tell me they'd hired an attorney, Mr. Daniel Clark. They were requesting a formal reading of the will on Monday afternoon. I was ready. That weekend, I went shopping at high-end boutiques. I chose a black suit, elegant and understated, paired with my grandmother's diamond necklace and the Rolex watch Robert gave me for our 8th anniversary. I moved into the penthouse suite at the Grand Hotel downtown on Sunday evening to prepare myself. On Monday, I arrived at Daniel Clark's office early. The receptionist looked at me with dismissal. I could hear Lily and the others arguing about me in the hallway. They thought I was an inconvenience, not a real beneficiary. When the will reading started, they were shocked to find that Robert had left them $30,000 each, and the rest of the estate, including all properties and business interests, went to me. Lily couldn't believe it. She exploded, saying I'd never worked and had just lived off Robert's success. But I stood up and calmly agreed with her about Robert's consulting firm and his modest investments being all his. Then I revealed that I was the primary owner of most of the significant assets in the family. Henry and my legal representative, Ms. Ava Green, presented documents that showed I'd owned the house since 2009, 5 years after our marriage, and that I'd been the financial backbone of the family. The total value of my holdings was approximately $55 million, not including what I inherited from Robert. Their faces turned pale with shock and horror. I told them they were trespassing in my house and gave them 72 hours to leave. The next few days were filled with Lily's desperate calls, which I ignored. David came to my hotel to apologize. I could see he was genuinely remorseful. I decided to give him a chance, but I made it clear that I wouldn't be the invisible woman anymore. On the last day of the deadline, I drove to the house. They were having a family meeting about me. Lily tried to propose a settlement, but I refused. Her parents, who were there, were appalled when they learned the truth about me and their daughter's actions. In the end, they left, and I finally felt free. Now, as I sit here in my garden, I'm open to rebuilding relationships with Mark and Susan if they choose to. But as for Lily, she burned that bridge herself. Life has taught me that some assumptions can be very costly, and true relationships are built on understanding and respect.